Welcome all. Can you hear me? Great. So welcome to this digital book launch, which is organized by the research group Potent, Post-Truth English Teaching. The title of the book we are here to celebrate is Current Issues in English Teaching. The book covers a range of issues that are highly relevant as educational concerns in the 21st century. Several chapters relate to today's technology-rich language classrooms and provide insight into the use of computer technology, allowing educational use of films, narrative apps, digital games, and AI models. With a critical literacies as a key theme in the book, it also deals with approaches to extramural activities, interdisciplinary topics, and multimodal texts. So I'm pleased to introduce the editor, Aud Solbjørg Skulstad, who is Professor of English Didactics and has been involved in teacher education at the University of Bergen since 1996. She will present the book and tell us more about its contents and the authors who have contributed to the volume. After her, Associate Professor Fredrik Røkenes from the NTNU will give a review of the book. This will be followed by two of the contributing authors, Associate Professor Anja Bakken from the University of Southeastern Norway and Professor Irina Engenes, Østfold University College, who will present their respective chapters. After this round of presentations, we will welcome questions and comments from you all if there's still time. So with this, I give the word to Aud Solbjørg, please.
Hello, good to see you all. First, I want to thank you all for joining this event, and a special thanks to Fredrik for his reading of the book, and to Anja and Irina for their enthusiastic yeses to give us a taste of their chapters. And last but not least, thanks to Hild and the Potent Research Group for organizing this event. The publishing of a new book is always an enjoyable moment, and I am very grateful for having such a great team of authors and co-authors as part of the book project. 12 teacher educators from 6 different institutions, 2 researchers and 4 English teachers have contributed. A big thank you to all of you. I will say a few words about the idea behind the book, concentrating on what I mean by the most central phrase in the title of the book, current issues, and the idea behind my choice of current issues to include. As you know, student teachers, which is the biggest reader group, request items on their reading lists which are updated, highly relevant and engaging, not only from a theoretical point of view, but also from a practical point of view. This is a prerequisite for creating the book. A relevant question in designing the book was, what makes an issue current? According to the Cambridge Dictionary, current issues subsume issues which many people are discussing or thinking about at the present time. In this category are issues in this book related to AI technologies, which are at everyone's lips at the moment. This volume includes, in fact, the very first publication from a large project on the use of AI technology in English teaching, carried out by scholars at Østfold University College. And Irina Engenes will talk more about this chapter later today. A second chapter in the book on the use of AI technologies in English teaching is co-authored by Samia Tuleb and myself, and it discusses the use of large language models such as ChatGPT. The use of AI technologies in education is referred to as a paradigm shift, and it definitely deserves a place among current issues according to dictionary definition. In what is referred to as the post-truth era, students may have problems in assessing text trustworthiness and identifying bias in text, to mention a few areas. The need for developing students' critical thinking and critical literacies is urgent, and this aim is reflected in several of the chapters, as Hild mentioned, including Helga Emma Rimmereide and Alicia Wenberg's chapter on developing students' environmental awareness through literature, Anja Bakken's critical literacy approach to the film Barbie, and we will hear more about this chapter later today, and my own chapter on how textbook texts may be a starting point for fostering students' critical literacy, including identifying gender bias in English textbooks. But issues do not have to be completely new to count as a current issue. Assessment is, as you know, a standard part of education and will always be relevant to teachers, such as the renewed focus on formative assessment in the English subject curriculum of 2020. But a more current issue in relation to assessment for learning is the use of AI technology as part of feedback procedures and students' meta talk about text and writing, discussed in the chapter already mentioned by Irina Engenes, Mirita Segaran, and Ingeborg Krange. Another current issue related to assessment is assessment of multimodal texts. Although the creation of multimodal text is mentioned in the English subject curriculum, there is no mention of assessment of such texts in this curriculum document, and teachers often seem to be at a loss to assess visual aspects and design of multimodal learner texts. A chapter written by Sigrid Ørevik showcases a way in which English teachers can implement assessment of students' multimodal texts, and it also presents relevant research on this issue. Yet another current issue related to the overall topic of assessment is how the development of students' democratic citizenship competence may be supported through assessment. This chapter is co-authored by Siri Mohammed Roux and Nanna Påske. Norwegian classrooms are often characterized as being technology-rich, and it is only to be expected that various technologies form part of the subject matter of a volume on current issues in English teaching. Annette Hagen has written a chapter which scrutinizes narrative apps as a form of literature and discusses their didactic potential in English teaching. The chapter on virtual reality head-mounted displays starts by pointing out a research gap as to the use of VR technology in compulsory education, particularly within a Norwegian context and also in relation to language subjects. The chapter is co-authored by myself and two teachers in primary and lower secondary school, Terje Pedersen and Kim Aarberg. The overarching topic of this school project, called Project Possible, was to develop the students' life skills. Multimodal text creation and the use of avatars are among the aspects discussed in this chapter. A chapter on digital games is an obvious choice in a book on current issues, because this is a popular and relevant topic for student teachers, and English teachers sometimes struggle as to how commercial digital games can be purposefully adapted and employed in their teaching. The chapter by Lenka Garsol and Line Føreland aims to meet this challenge. A final current issue discussed in this volume is students' engagement with English outside of school, which may amount to several hours daily through activities such as gaming and using social media. This is referred to as extramural English, and the chapter is co-authored by Alison Rød and Raes Kalafati. To sum up then, the book has been designed with three main types of current issues in mind. First, current issues in the dictionary sense of the word, referring to issues which many people are discussing or thinking about at the present time. Two, taking relevant and updated angles to standard elements of education, such as assessment. And three, discussing current issues relevant to technology-rich classrooms. I hope you will find the book useful, relevant, and dealing with topics that you find to be current issues in English teaching. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aud Solbjørg, for giving this overview of the relevance, aims, and contents of the book. It's now my pleasure to give the word to Fredrik Røkenes, who will review the book.
Thank you, Hild, and also thank you, Aud Solbjørg, for that lovely presentation of the book, and also thank you for having me. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces here today. My name is Fredrik. I work at the Department of Teacher Education at NTNU, and my interests are, as many of you know, computer-assisted language learning, AI, and professional digital competence in English. So that's probably also why I was asked to review this book, because there are many topics that deal with things that are very close to my heart. I understand that a reader acts as a sort of reviewer, so I'll give some very brief perspectives on the anthology, and I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet because I'm more interested in hearing more about the individual contributions here. When I read the book, I really enjoyed it because it deals with many topics that are very close to my heart, and I also learned about topics that I'm very unfamiliar with, such as extramural English and how to develop democratic skills and environmental awareness in English. Never thought about that. I'm also very motivated to share this book with my colleagues and my students, because when I speak as a teacher educator, as a researcher, and as a supervisor, and I represent an organization that offers teacher education for primary and lower secondary school students, the GLU, and also to PPU and FEM-LU, the upper secondary school teacher education students. So overall, this is a very impressive undertaking, and it truly meets the goals that it sets out to do, the goals of exploring a range of current, practical, and theoretical approaches to teaching and assessing English in the 21st century. So I'm very impressed with the range of topics that includes, such as artificial intelligence, VR, gaming, extramural English, and also new ways of working with literature and text, such as through apps, films, and multimodality and critical literacy. And then all the chapters I feel are very accessible, of high academic quality and rigor, original, and full of relevant and interesting examples. I think my students would love reading this book because there's so many examples that they can instantly apply to their teaching practice, because many of my students are often curious about what kind of tricks can they learn from these books. And also, I must say that it's very elegantly curated by the editor and the publishing house. So I have to especially applaud the editor and the authors for taking risks by including cutting-edge topics and novel topics, such as large language models, the film Barbie, which was released last year and already is being written about, and then also issues that are maybe a bit vague, but that I think are dealt with very, very elegantly, such as assessing democratic skills and promoting environmental awareness in English teaching. And also the overall framing of the book in the introduction chapter is, and also touched upon here by Aud Solbjørg, is particularly interesting in the way that it raises relevant issues and questions in English, such as what is literacy in the 21st century? What artifacts of technology-rich English classroom artifacts do we deal with in the English classroom? How do we deal with misinformation and questioning what is truth in today's society? And how do we deal with these semiotic machines? How can we apply them in our teaching and learning? So in other words, I think the editor knows what she's doing, and she at least makes me really excited about learning more about this book. I feel like this book is a very important contribution to the field of knowledge of teaching and learning in an English subject, as it deals with aspects that many readers will find relevant, fascinating, and helpful in their teaching practice. It's a research-based contribution, so will inspire many practicing and also incoming teachers in the many years to come. So I'm confident that several teacher educators in primary and secondary school teacher education programs will include this book or chapters on their reading lists for the upcoming years. I for sure will do that. If I were a student teacher today, I would be very excited to read about this work, because when I was a student teacher, I hardly had access to similar resources from a Norwegian context when I studied almost 20 years ago. So almost 20 years ago, what I had access to was Hildegunn Ottnes' anthology from 2009, Å være digital i alle fag, to be digital competent in all teaching subjects. And the two authors that represented foreign languages and English were Andreas Lund and Inger Langseth. And back then, the focus was mainly on using the internet to gather information, or promoting students' writing skills using Wikipedia, or using online dictionaries to save time to look up words. So it's very incredible to see how research on English teaching in Norway has progressed since then. And then now we have access to really high quality books such as Literature for the English Classroom, Teaching English in the 21st Century, Teaching English in Norwegian Classrooms from Research to Practice, and now we have the current issues in English teaching. So I want to end by saying congratulations to all the authors and encouraging to pushing the forefront of knowledge in your field. So now more than ever, Norway needs knowledgeable, creative, professional, passionate English teachers. So thank you for providing them with high quality, research-based and exciting materials. So thank you and best of luck with your future research.
Thank you, Frederick, for this very insightful and positive review. Next up is Anja Bakken, who will give an appetizer from her chapter on critical literacy, on a critical literacy approach to the film Barbie.
Thank you, Hild, and thank you, Frederick. I agree so much. So interesting to hear you talk about the old days. It's last century, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So, hello, everybody. I will give a brief appetizer of my chapter, and I'm going to be focusing on the topic, obviously, and the aim, and also give some snippets from the film itself and how it can be used. So I have to tell you first that the chapter builds on my previous work on a framework for teaching critical literacy in the English language classroom from 2022. And as I briefly account for in this chapter, film in English teaching is nothing new, but these narratives, filmic narratives, have been used primarily to illustrate a topic, while attention to form or filmic resources and how they are employed in the representation of the world have rarely been part of English language classroom practices. And also, to my knowledge, the films that teachers tend to choose are films referred to as good films, with a message one agrees with, for instance, about race relations in the US, past and present. Barbie is not that kind of film. So in this chapter, I argued that there is an underexploited potential for enacting critical literacy in the English language classroom using films. So the chapter showcases how a pedagogical framework for critical film literacy can be applied to the film Barbie, or other films, obviously. And this film is, of course, the chapter's focal point. The framework that I present is based on Jank's concepts of reading with and against a text, which you probably all know, as well as Burns' model Andrew Burns' model for multimodal film analysis. And the framework revolves around two sets of questions: what meaning is made, and how is meaning made, and second, why is meaning made in this way, questioning the filmmakers' choices in terms of the versions of the world that is represented, and also film's work in society. So in this way, the chapter provides what I hope can be a manageable toolkit for critical investigation of film. And let's just share just the my first image here. I hope you all can look at something pink now. Yeah. So I chose the film Barbie because it provides a powerful example of how a fictional universe, its characters, story, and worldviews can span digital and physical domains and generations. When it was launched last summer, it received a lot of praise, but also some controversy followed, while audiences flocked to the cinemas dressed in pink, and Barbie doll sales rocketed. Whether you like the film or not, I believe it has some really interesting features that lend themselves well to the multimodal and critical approach presented in this chapter. So now let's have a quick look at some of the features of the film. So I'm not sure how many of you have seen the film, but the setting is Barbieland, a fictional dream world populated by different human-sized versions of the Mattel doll line. The opening scenes introduce us to this queendom and the characters that inhabit it, the Barbies and the Kens. And from the elevated vantage point of the stereotypical Barbie's dream house, she oversees her land in bright colored splendor, complete with luxury mansion, extravagant fashion, and expensive cars. And you're looking at that right now, right? Yes? You see that? Yeah, good. So, let's see. Yeah. So, traditional gender roles are turned upside down in this fictional universe. The Barbies are busy running the place, while the Kens spend their days on sports and games. The Barbies are politicians, doctors and lawyers. The Ken's expertise is beach. What I found particularly intriguing with this film is how it cleverly employs filmic resources, filming, editing, visual and embodied resources to bring the fantasy world and the real world in touch with each other. And in this film's logic, challenges arise in Barbieland because of the real world's owners' treatment of their Barbie dolls. So if doll owners are not happy with their Barbie, they may deprive her of her Barbie magic. So this happens when, for instance, stereotypical Barbie experiences that she no longer is able to float safely from the top stairs of her dream house and into her car. As a result, she falls mercilessly to the ground. Another example of how this works is when Barbie is struck by a disastrous bodily malfunction in Barbieland terms. When her heels touch the ground and stay there, Barbie panics, and on the screen that you are looking at now, it shows stereotypical Barbie being surrounded by her Barbie friends, and as she seeks help and support for her ailment. The camera stops, you can't see that here, but if you watch the film, you can see it, at each of the Barbies and zooms in on their facial bodily reactions. The mouths of the Barbies open wide, and as they lean backwards, repulsed by the sight of stereotypical Barbie's deformity. One Barbie is so disgusted by what she sees that she must vomit. Barbie's feet are made for wearing high heels and not for walking. The thought of having to endure Birkenstock sandals forever is both unbearable and frightening. To resolve the issue, Barbie and Ken travel to the real world, represented by Santa Monica, California. So the film Barbie aptly employs elements of meta-humor, which I also find quite interesting to investigate, by commenting on features that are already embedded within the conventional Barbie narrative to establish distance from that feature. For instance, when Barbie self-consciously calls herself stereotypical Barbie, it can be seen as a nod to the criticism directed at Mattel for producing a female ideal who is single-mindedly obsessed with looks and fashion. In this chapter, I bring attention to how examples from the film lend themselves to an exploration of what meaning is made and how it is made through filmic resources, thus opening for a discussion of possible interpretations of the film narrative. Those discussions may revolve around the film's representations of ethnic diversity or gender issues, how film viewers are positioned vis-a-vis the film narrative, for instance, what characters are they meant to identify with, and last, the potential impact of film in society, like Barbie narratives that travel within and across different formats and settings that young people are so familiar with from other films as well, such as the Disney films and so on. So thank you all for listening. That was all from me this time.
Thank you, Anja, for this. I second Frederick's comment. I think it's really impressive that you were able to include such a current example as this film. I'm now happy to introduce Professor Irina Angenes, who will present the chapter of which she is the first author, Learning to Write in English, Development of Conceptual Understanding in a Writing Process with Feedback from Artificial Intelligence and Collaborating Peers. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hild. Hello, everyone, and happy to be here. And thank you very much, Aud, for inviting me to contribute to your book with the chapter, and also inviting here to present the chapter at this event. So I'm going to share my screen in a moment. So I've got a small presentation. Here you go. Do you see my screen now? Good. I'm just starting the full screen mode. As Hild has said, absolutely right, the chapter is chapter 8. It's learning to write in English, development of conceptual understanding in the writing process with feedback from artificial intelligence and collaborating peers. And I've written this chapter in collaboration with my colleagues, Merita and Ingeborg. And the chapter presents the findings from the research project that I'm also leading at the moment, and it's artificial intelligence for assessment for learning to improve learning and teaching in the 21st century. And it's Norwegian Research Council project where Aud Solbjørg University College is leading this project in collaboration with Volda University College and a commercial partner, Hypatia Learning, who's producing the artificial intelligence technology for us, and Halden municipality, where we try it out in Halden schools. So basically, this chapter is one of the first publications presenting the findings of the project and the technology that we develop in this project. And just a few words, why actually what's the project is about. The project aims to enhance the initiative Assessment for Learning that was introduced in Norway back in 2010. And we know that the real situation in Norwegian classrooms is really different from all the expectations and kind of intentions that were launched back in 2010 when this approach was introduced first in Norwegian schools. And we know that assessment for learning is one of these few strategies that we are aware of that are aimed to develop the so-called broader, or we'll say metacognitive understanding of students about how to go about learning. And in particular, when we talk about writing as a learning process, so how to engage in the writing process and what it means to write a good text, basically. In other words, we say that we know that assessment for learning is one of these few strategies that we are aware of to enhance students' so-called learning to learn approach. And again, talking about the situation in Norwegian classrooms, we also know that this is an extremely time and resource consuming process. We, in the project, aim to develop, and we're actually developing an artificial intelligence technology, which is called essay assessment technology, that can help the teachers to enhance the assessment for learning approach in their teaching practices. So what essay assessment technology does, it's analyze students' texts, and it offers different types of feedback. And these types of feedback are usually evaluated by Norwegian teachers in the classroom. So this is the aspects of language, the content of the text, and the structure of the text. So we developed this technology in 3 prototypes, each prototype targeting a particular type of feedback. So the first prototype that we have developed and tried out and present the results of this trial session in this chapter is the feedback on language. So the second prototype is also developed in the moment. We've just finished the data collection round in Norwegian schools, which is extremely exciting, and I'm looking forward to start analyzing. And the third prototype is going to be developed by the end of this year. And again, we follow the same group of students. The students from the 8th to the 10th grade, and again, the research findings that we present in this chapter are with the younger students, the students of the 8th grade. So, what the chapter presents, basically, we address two research questions or two aspects in this chapter. We looked at how students engage with the feedback offered by assessment technology in so-called target class, and compare the students' engagement with the students that completed exactly the same writing assignment, but they didn't use the technology, the students in the comparison class. And we discuss actually how students' engagement with the two types of feedback, the feedback from the artificial intelligence in the target class and the feedback from their peers, have contributed to their conceptual understanding of the feedback. We know feedback is, again, is a well-discussed concept, and we argue that particularly in the process-oriented writing or the assessment for learning process, it's extremely important for students to develop their conceptual understanding of the feedback they are offered either by the teacher, by the artificial technology, or the peers, so to improve their text. So the conceptual understanding of the feedback is absolutely central in the writing process. So what we do in the chapter, we kind of, give a brief introduction of the history of the development of the writing skills in English, in not only in Norway, but actually kind of worldwide, particularly focusing, of course, on the European context. And then we also offer an overview of the development of technologies that have been used, for assessing students' writing work, basically assessing student text. And we know it's been last 20 years that technology has been developed, starting from mainly summative assessment technology like automated essay scoring to a more qualitatively assessing technologies that have been appeared probably in the 2020s, and particularly now, the technologies that are mainly based on the artificial intelligence, which incorporates both qualitative and quantitative assessments of the text. So we built the analysis of the data that we present on the cultural historical perspective, and we use Vygotsky's categories of spontaneous and scientific concepts. We also built on the kind of extension of Vygotsky's contribution of the contemporary of Vygotsky, Skulpturin, where and his kind of conceptualization that each concept consists of essential characteristics or features, and particularly in order to develop this conceptual understanding, so these features of the target concept has to be introduced to the learners. And again, he told Galperin postulated that learning process is fundamentally in interaction with cultural resources that encapsulate these essential characteristics of the target concept. In other words, so if we want students to develop their conceptual understanding, we need to expose them to certain cultural resources that would assist them or help them to develop this conceptual understanding and encapsulate this knowledge, the essential characteristics of the target concepts. We also use Galperin's kind of, types of orientation, or in other words, how a learning process can be designed. And it's incomplete, where learning happens by trial and error. Basically, with no orientation of the learning process, students are exposed to the task and asked to complete the task and to deliver their outcomes, their text, basically. The complete orientation, where students are given really lots of guidance and stepwise guidance, how to complete the task, and kind of, the ongoing feedback in their process. And the complete and constructed by learners following a general approach to identify the essential features that encapsulates kind of a general approach that can be used when solving a particular task, for example, writing a text on a particular topic, but also kind of a unified approach that can be used by the students when they engage in different tasks, or for example, writing text on different topics, for example. And this third type of orientations, we argue it resonates very much with the assessment for learning approach. So the students, as I said in our chapter, are the students of the 8th grade. They were tasked with writing a text of somebody who they consider to be a hero, and argue why they think this person should be considered a heroic person. And again, so the process, the writing process that they were involved in, the feedback they were supposed to get was the feedback mainly on the language, which included grammar, punctuation, and spelling. This some pictures, from the writing process again. So these are the pictures from the target class where the students wrote their first draft in the technology that we designed for them. And then they got their feedback from the technology. They were sitting in groups of 4, as you see. So they were discussing this feedback, helping each other to make meaning of this feedback and how to use it to improve their next draft, produce their second draft, engage them around the feedback. And then the final draft was submitted for the teacher evaluation. So basically, the artificial intelligence technology that we are designing is modeling the whole writing process, where the students are engaged again in the producing the 3 drafts, but also in the feedback and discussion of feedback sessions. Again, some pictures of the writing process. And the data that we analyze and present in this chapter is collected from 6 classes, 3 target classes in 3 different schools in Halden municipality, and 3 comparison classes. We present the findings from the quantitative data. We compared the students' grades from the first to the last draft, and we considered them as pre and post tests. And we saw the kind of the difference, in the students' performance, at the beginning from the first to the last draft. And also the analysis of the qualitative data, the students' interactions in groups when they were discussing and made meanings, of the feedback that they received either from artificial intelligence in the target classes or from their peers in the comparison classes. So the findings are quite interesting, at least from my kind of perspective. We saw that the students in all target classes improved their grades from the first to the final draft, where the students just only in one comparison class improved their grades from the first to the last draft, and the students in 2 other classes, they actually went down to the grade from the first to the last draft. And this is a really interesting finding, which we are very much intended to look into while analyzing the data from the second round of data collection to find an answer on this. We believe it might be to do something with the feedback, as you know, is extremely important in the writing process. But again, this is yet to be discovered. Basically, we saw actually both in the target and comparison classes, it was when the students engage in the feedback giving process in the comparison class, but also kind of discussing their feedback. It was extremely important for the students to develop their understanding of what language, about the conceptual understanding basically of the language feedback. What is language feedback? They were asking each other questions. What is punctuation? What is spelling, for example? What do we mean by grammar feedback, for example? And different kind of versions of the grammar feedback they got either from artificial intelligence, but also from the feedback. So they were focused at the beginning of their discussions on the development of their conceptual understanding of the feedback they were supposed to work with. So in the target class, again, this is the class that used artificial intelligence. We saw that the students use this feedback provided by the assessment technology as a starting point from their discussions. And these were the discussions that were easily initiated. The feedback was perceived as something neutral, provided by the technology. And the student took it as a starting point, to start their discussions and their discussions. But also, since the feedback was classified in specific kind of subcategories, again, grammar, punctuation, and spelling, this was also much easier for the students to develop their understanding what language feedback makes, basically. And we also saw that the feedback from assessment technology might have complemented the teacher, because the teacher orchestration of the writing process was also different in these two classes. Where in comparison class, we saw that it was extremely difficult for the students to start their discussions due to the uncertainty about the characteristic features of the syntactic or language feedback. It was extremely difficult to make this transfer, for them to make the transfer from the assessment rubric to they're using to the feedback they were supposed to offer on each other's texts. And so through these interactions, we didn't really notice that the students operated with these categories as grammar, punctuation, and spelling. But they ended up with, in the process, which was similar, like marking each other's text, basically, and telling, so you've done such and such mistakes, and if you address these places in the text as mistakes, so you can improve their draft. So, oops. Here you go. And so based on this, we saw that from the perspective of Galperian's theory, we saw in the comparison class, the learning process was very much resembled so-called second type of orientation, as again, step-by-step guidance, how to complete the draft, how to complete the task, to write the essays through the several drafts, in order to produce as best products as possible, as best learning outcome as possible. And again, this marking process and this type of orientation might be useful, again, when the main aim is to complete a task and produce the best possible text, but it doesn't create an understanding, what it means to engage in the writing process with the feedback. And which means it doesn't facilitate understanding of the writing process as such. Where we saw in the target class, we argue that this process was very much in line with the third type of orientation, where the students were offered this very much categorized and structured feedback, and these categories contributed to develop students' conceptual understanding of the language feedback, which we argue might be useful when students engage in the writing process again and are supposed to give each other feedback on language, so that they know how to go about and what type of actually feedback they're supposed to give each other in this writing process, and how to go about the feedback giving process as well. So we argue also that these findings have pedagogical implications, and such as it is as important for the learners to develop their conceptual understanding of the feedback, of the type of feedback they are supposed to get or to offer themselves in the writing process. And such technology, artificial intelligence, and in particular the technology that we are creating, might be useful to develop such an understanding. And again, so by using this feedback, the students may not just only and developing their conceptual understanding of the feedback, the students might not be only able to produce a very good text, but also develop understanding of the assessment for learning approaches, but in other words, to develop their understanding of learning to learn approach, what it means to learn, what it means to write a good text. Yes, so we believe that this chapter is interesting and useful for future teachers, teacher students, teacher educators, and yeah, again, I'm happy that we got this opportunity to contribute to this anthology.
Thank you very much, Irina. Now this ends our round of presentation. Let's open the floor for questions or comments. You may raise your hand using the reactions function, or just chime in. Anybody? Okay. So if there are no questions or comments, I would just like to thank you all for attending this event. And if I'm allowed to share my own 2 cents here at the end, I'd like to add my voice to the chorus of those who have already celebrated the book for its fresh perspectives on English teaching. The chapters provide valuable insight into many new challenges and opportunities that English teachers face in today's classroom. And I particularly believe that teachers, as well as teacher educators and student teachers, will welcome its focus on practical aspects and concrete examples. So special thanks to today's presenters, and of course a big thank you to the editor Aud Solbjørg, who has provided us with this book. Thank you.
Thank you.